Have you ever wondered what gives people the right to tell you what to do?
Hey Dan, did you take out the trash?
Oh, Doc, can't you say I'm trying to kill some Nazi zombies?
Well, your mother said she'd like you to take out the trash.
Oh, my life sucks. Why do I even have to listen to you anyways?
When the Zhou Dynasty was founded in the 1100s BCE, it marked the beginning of the longest dynasty in Chinese history. It's long enough, in fact, that we have to divide it into two distinct periods, the Western and Eastern periods, and even those have different subcategories. The Zhou Dynasty started as a small kingdom to the west of the Shang. In 10,046 BCE, King Wu of the Zhou defeated King Di Xin of the Shang in battle. In fact, a lot of Di Xin's own warriors turned against him and fought with the Zhou during the uprising. Because, human sacrifice tends to be just a little bit unpopular. And Di Xin, once he realizes that he is defeated, he ran into his palace and set it on fire, as one does, and died within. Eventually, the Zhou Dynasty ruled an impressive amount of territory, all the way from the Yellow River Valley to the Yangtze River Valley. But how was a small kingdom that would have been considered semi-barbarians able to convince the Shang people to let them rule, especially for so long? The Zhou claimed to have the authority to rebel against the Shang because of the mandate of heaven. This concept, introduced by the Zhou, became a lasting part of Chinese culture and tradition. This concept of the mandate of heaven is that a king's right to rule is granted by heaven. And this is an idea that isn't just unique to China. In fact, it's independently invented in other cultures as well, like the Europeans' divine right of kings. The Chinese version of heaven is probably a lot different than what comes to your mind when you think of heaven. It's not these fluffy white clouds in the sky, but instead this universal force that just flows through everything. And if it decided that you were unfit to rule, like in the case of the Shang, it would allow you to be removed. The Zhou also introduced a new political structure to China called feudalism. Feudalism is a type of decentralized government where lords or high-ranking officials are given land by kings in return for paying taxes and providing soldiers. Common people, called peasants, then work for the lords in exchange for protection and use of that land. And this political system is used in other places as well. It was used in Japan and most famously medieval Europe. This system brought order to China and allowed the Zhou to control a lot more territory than they otherwise could have. Remember, there's no internet, no cell phones, no walkie-talkies, so it's very difficult to communicate. You couldn't just call people up and help avert disaster. Hello, yeah. Hey, if you guys could stop rebelling, that would be like super. Initially, it even brought a great deal of loyalty to the Zhou kings. In ancient China, there's a great deal of respect within families. Remember, even during the Shang Dynasty, people would worship their ancestors. And the Zhou took advantage of this. Lords were often somehow related to the Zhou king. And in instances where they weren't, marriages were often arranged. As time went on, however, some of these lords became less loyal to the Zhou king as lands got passed down to sons and grandsons. And these distant relatives started to feel more connected with the territories they controlled rather than the Zhou king. In fact, some of these lords even stopped sending soldiers to fight against invaders. The start of the Eastern Jo Dynasty, and obviously the end of the Western Zhou Dynasty, started after the capital city was sacked or plundered and destroyed in 771 BCE. So there's this whole legend that goes with this too, that there is this king named King Yu. Yes, another King Yu. His first wife, Queen Shen, he decided she wasn't all that great and got rid of her in favor of another queen named Baosi. And supposedly Baosi had this most gorgeous smile. It just light up all the world. But she refused to smile, no matter what he would do, and he was going to some pretty extreme lengths. And finally he had this idea that he's going to light one of his beacon towers on fire that signals the army that there's an invasion. So he lights this on fire, and all the lords and all the lands close to the capital city come racing in to defend the king against this invasion. Only they rush into town to find Baosi laughing hysterically. So the king's pretty amused with himself because he finally got his queen to laugh. Queen Shen's dad, who's a very powerful lord, gets really upset, and so he gets his army together and he charges into the capital city to take King Yu out. And King Yu sees this coming, the beacon towers get lit up ablaze, and nobody comes because they're afraid it's another prank, and King Yu dies. So the capital city's taken, King Yu's dead, but he did leave an heir, so the Zhou Dynasty lasts, but it's greatly weakened. So this legend probably was just made up by the invaders to try to paint King Wu as this inept ruler, and therefore their invasion's justified because of the mandate of heaven, because he wasn't doing a good job, so he gets X'd. The capital was moved to the east, hence the Eastern Jo Dynasty. And we referred to the first half between 771 BCE and 481 BCE as the spring and autumn period. During this time, the Zhou Dynasty continued to lose power and influence. The lords became increasingly unloyal not only to just the king, but to themselves as well within their own families. Brothers fought brothers for inheritance, and even when fathers tried to correct this by dividing their lands up equally when they died, it still caused issues. By 41 BCE, the dynasty had entered the Warring States period. The Zhou kings held very little power, and it was mostly just a ceremonial rule. In fact, they relied on just a handful of loyal lords to even stay in power. Other states fought to consolidate power, and the dynasty went from being made up of over 100 states to just 7. And most of these states considered themselves independent from the Zhou Dynasty. But despite all this strife, the Eastern Jo Dynasty became a golden age for Chinese philosophy and innovation. Confucius came up with his ideas for how families and government should behave. Lao Tzu founded Taoism, and Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War, which is still a bestseller today. The constant fighting of the Warring States period sparked innovations like the crossbow and Chinese iron making. Furthermore, leaders stopped just putting friends and family into positions of power, and instead gave these positions to more competent people, or people that were more skillful and knowledgeable. The Zhou Dynasty lasted till 228 BCE when they were defeated by the Qin, kicking off the Qin Dynasty. This long-lasted Zhou Dynasty had great impacts on not only China's history, but also your history as well. The Zhou Dynasty was buoyed by the concept of the mandate of heaven, which, although initially was an excuse as to why they could take out another dynasty, ended up making a lot of Zhou kings to be very self-reflective on whether or not they're doing a good job. If you've ever seen a yin-yang sign, that came from Lao Tzu and Taoism. And The Art of War is still a bestseller and read by not only military leaders, but also coaches and businessmen all over the world. Anyways, thank you to all you guys that subscribed. You didn't have to. I hope you're all doing well. And until next time, I'll miss you all terribly.